Thank you very much. Kindly take your seat. The Deputy Rector, Professor Ebenezer Daku, the Dean of Gimpa Law School, Dr. Kweku Ajimai Budu. So I know you. And of course, my fellow alumni, Cedric, representing the Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability, and the indefatigable Worship Frimpong, who's the Executive Director of Eco Africa, distinguished other speakers, dear students. As I was getting ready to speak, I said I better put in context why I'm here. I'm not here because I'm second lady or former second lady, as it were. I'm here because of the work I've done in the areas of climate action and women and children particularly. And I'm happy to be speaking this evening on ensuring climate justice, women and children, ensuring equity in the fight against climate change. When we speak of climate change, we often hear about rising temperatures. As our MC said, it's a bit warm in here, but I'm not sure it's climate change, it's the air conditioning. We hear about melting ice caps and extreme weather patterns. But climate change is not merely an environmental issue. It's a human issue. It's a social issue. And fundamentally, it's a justice issue. At its core, climate justice asks us a critical question. Who bears the greater burden of a crisis they did little to cause? For too long, the answer has been the same. The world's most vulnerable, especially women and children in developing countries, are those who bear the brunt of it. Today, more than 3,600,000,000 people live in areas that are highly vulnerable to climate change. That's according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Bear with me, I have a lot of data, but we need to put it in context, so I need to put out the data. Yet, the poorest half of the world's population contributes only 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, while the richest 10% contributes nearly half, which is about 48%. Africa has 17% of the global population. Africa's emissions account for only 4% of global carbon emissions. 4%. And still, it's on this continent that we see the most devastating effects. The floods, the droughts, the food insecurity, displacement, just to mention a few. In East Africa alone, more than 34 million people faced hunger last year due to worsening droughts intensified by climate change. Clearly, those who contribute the least are those who are suffering the most. Climate injustice, my dear friends, is not gender neutral. It is not age neutral. In other words, it doesn't affect everyone equally, no. Women and children are disproportionately impacted and often excluded from the solutions. In many rural communities across the global south, women walk an average 6 kilometers each day just to fetch water. They spend 20 hours a week collecting firewood for food, time that could be spent on education, economic empowerment, and just resting or having well-being. Globally, 3 billion people still rely on solid biomass fuel, such as wood, charcoal, animal dung for cooking, which results in household air pollution, which causes 3,200,000 premature deaths annually, with women and children accounting for 60% of those deaths. So when we say it's not gender neutral, you see why women are disproportionately affected. And these statistics are from the World Health Organization. Also, 1 billion children, that is nearly half of all of the world's children, live in countries classified by the UNICEF as being at extremely high risk from climate impact. In the last 6 years alone, climate-related disasters have displaced 43 million children from their homes. Meanwhile, 45 million children are suffering from the most life-threatening forms of malnutrition driven by by droughts and food insecurity. This is beyond a tragedy. This is a failure of justice. Global investment in energy, clean energy, was 1,700 billion in 2023. Let me say that again. 1,700 billion. That's the investment in clean energy in 2023. And that's according to the International Energy Agency. However, of that sum, less than 1% of those reached women-led organizations. Less than 2% of the total climate financing is directed to projects that explicitly address gender equality. 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa still live without electricity. 2,300 million people worldwide do not have access to clean cooking solutions. That is almost 1/3 of the population of the earth. This is energy poverty, and is the clearest barrier to development, dignified living, and resilience. So when we talk about clean cooking, it's not just a domestic concern. It's a climate solution. It's a health intervention. It is also supporting gender equity. It's an empowerment solution capable of accelerating development outcomes. Transitioning to clean cooking could prevent up to 1 gigaton of carbon emissions a year, which would save lives from preventable respiratory diseases, free up time for girls and women to pursue education, to pursue their livelihoods, and to reduce deforestation rates in some of our most vulnerable ecosystems. So as a champion for the Clean Cooking Alliance, I have witnessed the power of solution firsthand. I have seen how communities have changed from these interventions. But we must scale up efforts. We must make clean energy access a human right, not a privilege. At the Africa Women and Children's Conference, which I proudly chair, we are building a global platform for inclusion and advocacy through high-level dialogue, policy engagement, and intergenerational conversation. We are amplifying the voices of African women, youth, and children in the global climate discourse. We have participated at various international fora. Notably, we've been to COP. We took up almost 100 young people to go to COP to also be part of the conversation. And at COP, my good friend Cedric was talking about how the people who are causing the problem are lending us money to solve the problem and digging a bigger hole for us. And in the last years, we hear at COP people talk about loss and damage funds. And for me, that's even what triggered this Africa Women and Children's Conference, because these are funds that are supposed to be put aside for mitigation of climate disaster or climate change or the climate crisis, which is what it is. Now, when the funds come, how would they be applied? Who's going to benefit from it primarily? And it is the most vulnerable, the most affected, which is the women and the children. And that is what the conversation is about. So we're looking at, and the overarching theme is about how we can use policy and law for climate justice. So we should look at what are the contributions from the various member states. Is it proportionate to their emissions? We should look at what agreements we ourselves are signing up to. The people we send out there to represent us, what is the agreement that they are signing up to? And then what is the enforcement? People are talking about COP being a talk shop, because after 29 COPs, we need to see something. But, we're going back and forth. So for us in the Global South, we are the worst hit, How are we coming together? How are we, collaborating to put up a strong case? You heard about the Bridgetown Agreement, which was signed in Barbados. And this is how the push from the South to demand what is rightfully ours. So enforcement is important. So they commit on paper, but we don't see it on ground. So it is up to us advocates to push that those commitments come in place. And then, of course, there's green financing. How are we accessing green financing? So, Mr. Dean, maybe if the ministry is slow in giving you the funds, you can look at how green financing can also augment, or if they bring it, I'm sure they will. Cedric says he's bringing it. So we'll hold him accountable, right? We'll hold Cedric accountable for it. But once it comes, we can also look at how we can access green financing for some of these things that we're doing. We can look at carbon credits, for example. How do we make Gimpa a green campus? And then use that to get some funding to progress. So climate justice is not just for this generation. It is a promise for the next as well. And that promise must be fulfilled. It will be fulfilled through education, digital access, and green skills development. And as our dean said, they're going to start new courses in the green area. So that's also an opportunity for all of you here, and especially for our girls and our women. We need to be included along the value chain. Let's not let other people advocate for us. We should be advocating for ourselves. Africa is estimated to have the largest youth population in the world. That will be by 2030, officially we'll have the largest youth population, which will be over 400 million young people entering the workforce. But without climate-relevant skills, this demographic dividend will become a lost opportunity. There can be no climate justice without social justice, and no just transition without the inclusion of the most affected. Our roadmap forward must be grounded in equity. So let us design gender-responsive climate policies at national and global levels. Let us ensure that climate financing is accessible to women-led and youth-led grassroots initiatives. Most important, let us center women and children and the frontline communities in the decision-making process, not only as beneficiaries, but also as co-architects of our shared future. We therefore need multilateral commitment, private sector innovation, civil society, advocacy, and local leadership. All of them, all of us, working hand in hand. The climate crisis does not respect borders, and neither must our solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends, let us be clear. Climate justice is not an option. It's not an optional position to take. Let us ensure that women and children are not an afterthought in climate policy, but a driving force behind it. We must build a world where the clean energy transition uplifts rather than exclude. Let us choose a future that is fair, that is inclusive, and that is full of hope. Let us join hands for climate justice. The time is now. Thank you.
Wow. What a powerful speech that was. Please, can we put our hands together one more time